Sometimes, when I watch my daughter, Maya, play soccer, or see my son, Ethan, engrossed in a book, truly look at them, a heavy sense of calm settles over me. It's a peace I worked hard for, earned through years of confusion, pain, and a quiet, persistent refusal to give up. But it's not a peace that came easily. For a long time, everything felt like a battleground. My name is Adam, and I'm 41. Not so long ago, I found myself in what used to be our shared bedroom, staring at the empty side of the bed, wondering how our 13-year marriage had become a public performance about radical self-love. Chloe, my wife, had left me and our 2 kids for a barista barely older than our eldest. And the wild part? She didn't feel an ounce of guilt. She felt empowered. She didn't leave because she fell out of love, not really. She left because a specific echo chamber on the internet convinced her that being a wife and mother meant she had lost herself. And apparently, finding herself meant shedding everything we'd painstakingly built together. I'm not looking for sympathy, and I'm not here to tear her down. I just need to get this story out, because what happened over the past 2 years was so surreal, sometimes I still wake up thinking it was a fever dream. We had a good life, a solid life, in a quiet suburb of Richmond, Virginia. 2 kids, Maya who's now 13, and Ethan who's 11. I was a project manager, Chloe worked part-time as a graphic designer from home. It wasn't the stuff of blockbuster movies, but it was real. Comfortable. I thought we were fine. Not fireworks every day, maybe, but a steady, warm glow that comes from truly knowing someone. It started subtly, about 2 years ago. Chloe began saying she didn't know who she was anymore. My first thought was stress, maybe she needed a new hobby. I suggested she pick up painting again, like in college. She just looked at me, a blank, dismissive stare, as if I'd suggested she learn to juggle chainsaws. Adam, she said, her voice flat, I'm not talking about hobbies. I'm talking about my identity. She was right, I didn't get it. But I tried. I listened. I tried to be supportive, because that's what you do when your partner is struggling. Then came the social media. She started spending more and more time online, joining these women's groups, devouring articles about feminine awakening and patriarchal structures. Now, I'm all for women supporting women, truly. But there was something about these groups that felt off. They weren't talking about careers or equal pay. They were talking about marriage as a trap, motherhood as a societal construct designed to suppress female potential, how women needed to choose themselves first, always. Chloe started echoing these phrases that sounded like they'd been plucked straight from a self-help book written by someone with no concept of real-world responsibilities. She was reclaiming her narrative, she said, refusing to be defined by roles others gave her. Every time I tried to talk to her, to understand, she'd accuse me of being dismissive of her journey. The true turning point was when she joined what she called a feminist self-healing collective. From what I could gather, it was 6 women who met twice a week at a cafe in Old Town Alexandria, mostly to discuss how oppressed they were. And let me be clear, I am not mocking feminism or women's issues. I am talking specifically about this group, which felt less like a supportive community and more like a mutual admiration society for people looking for permission to detonate their lives. One woman had recently left her husband. Another was separated. They seemed to fuel each other, competing to see who could reject traditional life with the most conviction, who could achieve the most radical act of liberation. Have you ever watched someone you love being drawn into something, and felt utterly powerless to stop it? That's what those months were like. Chloe would come home from these meetings, practically vibrating with this manic energy, talking about breakthroughs and realizations. And when I'd ask what specific realizations she'd had, she'd get vague, saying she was learning that she mattered. Which confused me, because I never thought she didn't matter. We all did. Our kids started noticing. Their mother was physically present, but emotionally, she was a million miles away. One night, Maya asked me why Mommy seemed sad all the time. It broke my heart, because Chloe wasn't sad. She was just so consumed by this idea of self-discovery that she had stopped seeing the actual people right in front of her. Then Julian entered the picture. Honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. He was 26, worked at the same cafe where her group met, had that whole artist vibe with the man bun and the vintage band shirts. Chloe mentioned him a few times, a fellow creative spirit who understood her artistic side. I wasn't worried. I trusted her. And, frankly, Julian seemed like the kind of guy who would run a mile from the responsibility of a real relationship. I underestimated how alluring the idea of starting over can be when someone is constantly telling you your current life is holding you back. Chloe started staying out later after her group meetings, claiming she was networking with other designers. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We had 13 years, 2 children, a mortgage. You don't just throw that away for a barista with a philosophy degree. But she was pulling away in ways that became impossible to ignore. She stopped asking about my day. Stopped caring about the kids' school events. Stopped being present at dinner. When I finally confronted her, her response was clipped, rehearsed. I can't keep living for everyone else. I need to live for me. I remember standing in our kitchen, a cold dread washing over me, thinking, taking care of your family isn't living for everyone else. It's just called being an adult, but I didn't say it. I could see she was looking for a fight, looking for a reason to cast me as the villain in her narrative. The night she told me she was leaving, there was no yelling, no tears, no apology. Just a calm, almost detached declaration. I'm choosing myself, Adam. This isn't about you or the kids. This is about me finally being honest about what I need. When I asked what our kids needed, she simply said, they'll understand eventually. They'll thank me for showing them what it means to be authentic. I stood there, watching her pack a suitcase, a sick feeling in my stomach. Not anger yet, just this overwhelming, disorienting confusion. 3 days later, she moved in with Julian. Didn't even get her own place. Just went straight from our family home to his tiny apartment above a record store. Maya and Ethan asked where Mommy went, and I told them she needed some time to figure things out, which was the truth, even if it wasn't the whole truth. Ethan, who was only 11, asked, "Is it because of us?" And I had to sit them both down and explain that sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense, but it's never the kids' fault. Never. Ever. Chloe came by the next week to see the kids. She brought Julian. It felt like a slap, but I kept my cool. The kids were watching. She introduced him as her friend, someone who was helping her through a difficult time. As if I was the difficult time she needed help getting through. I watched Maya's face when she saw this stranger in our driveway. I saw the exact moment she understood. Everything had changed. Mom wasn't coming back. This was the new reality. Chloe started posting on social media about her journey. Long captions about breaking free from societal expectations and choosing radical self-love. Her friends from the group would chime in with praise, talking about how proud they were, how she was glowing. While I was at home, meal prepping for the week, helping with homework, and trying to explain to 2 bewildered children why their mother chose herself over them. Looking back, I can see all the warning signs I missed. The way she stopped talking about our future, but only her future. The way she framed every family responsibility as a burden, instead of just part of being a parent. But in the moment, I kept telling myself it was a phase. That she'd snap out of it once she realized what she was throwing away. I was wrong. She was just getting started. And I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The first month after Chloe left was the hardest. Not because I missed her, but because I had to become 2 parents overnight, all while trying to project an aura of everything's going to be okay. I took over the morning routines, the school drop-offs, homework checks, doctor appointments, parent-teacher conferences, all the invisible labor Chloe used to manage while I was at work. I realized, pretty quickly, just how much she'd done, before she decided none of it mattered anymore. Maya started having nightmares about her mom forgetting her. Ethan became quiet, withdrawn, in a way that genuinely scared me. I spent my evenings researching child psychologists while still trying to figure out what to pack for lunch the next day. There just weren't enough hours. Chloe would text occasionally, asking how the kids were doing. Messages about sending them love and light, which sounds nice until you realize that love and light don't help with 5th grade math homework or explain why mommy isn't coming to the school play. She'd schedule visits, then cancel last minute because Julian had surprised her with a weekend trip or because the self-healing group was having a special workshop. Every time I had to tell the kids that mom couldn't make it again, I watched a little piece of their hope wither. Something told me I needed to start keeping track of everything. Not for legal action yet, but some primal instinct whispered that this might matter later. I kept a simple calendar, marking when she was supposed to visit and when she actually came. I saved every text where she canceled or rescheduled. I noted every time the kids asked about her and what I told them. Just facts. No editorializing. Just the truth of what was happening. Months later, Chloe called me. She sounded more excited than I'd heard her in years, talking rapidly about new beginnings and symbolic fresh starts. Then she told me she was pregnant. I didn't say anything for a long moment, doing the math in my head. She'd gotten pregnant pretty quickly after moving in with Julian. When I finally managed to ask if she was sure, she declared, "This baby is a symbol of my rebirth, Adam. This is me creating life on my own terms." I wanted to point out that she'd already created life on her own terms twice, and those kids were currently asking me every night when she'd come home. But I just congratulated her and hung up. The self-healing group threw her a celebration, posting pictures on social media of Chloe, glowing in a flower crown, talking about divine feminine energy and the power of choosing yourself. I looked at those photos, thinking about Maya crying herself to sleep the night before, convinced her mom didn't love her anymore. Would you keep supporting someone who celebrated their new life while ignoring the children they'd left behind? Her so-called support system certainly did. Julian started pulling away around her 7th month. You could see it in the photos Chloe posted. He was there, but not really there. Standing slightly apart. Checking his phone. He looked like a guy who just realized that abstract ideals about freedom and self-discovery don't pay for diapers. Chloe's posts started shifting, less about liberation, more about the practical challenges of preparing for a baby. She was asking for recommendations for affordable cribs, inquiring about part-time, work-from-home jobs that were pregnancy-friendly. And the self-healing group? They went mysteriously quiet in the comments. Nobody was offering baby supplies. Nobody was volunteering to throw a baby shower. They were endlessly supportive of the idea of her choices, but apparently not the reality of them. I should have felt vindicated, but I just felt tired, watching this woman I'd spent 13 years with slowly realize that Instagram feminism doesn't keep the lights on. She reached out to her parents, asking for financial help. They told her they'd be happy to help their grandchildren, meaning Maya and Ethan, but they weren't going to fund her new life with a guy barely older than their nephew. Chloe saw this as a betrayal, and posted a long screed about how society punishes women for being honest. Her baby, a boy, was born 12 months after she left. Suddenly, Chloe was dealing with the raw reality of a newborn in a tiny apartment, with a partner who had emotionally checked out, and a support system that had evaporated the moment real help was needed. She started calling me more often. Not to talk about our kids, but to vent about Julian. How he wasn't stepping up. How alone she felt. How this wasn't what she thought it would be. I'd listen. Because that's what I do. But I never offered solutions. These weren't my problems to solve anymore. My lawyer had been telling me for months that I should file for primary custody. That I had more than enough documentation showing I was the stable parent. But I hesitated. I didn't want to be the guy who weaponized the courts against his ex. I wanted Chloe to step up on her own. But she wasn't stepping up. She was barely keeping her head above water. Missing more visits. Showing up late when she did come. looking exhausted and distracted. Maya and Ethan were getting anxious every time they were supposed to see her, because they never knew if she'd actually show. I finally filed for primary custody 14 months after she left. Not out of revenge, but out of necessity. My kids needed stability. They weren't getting it from her. The court process was surprisingly straightforward. My lawyer presented the calendar of missed visits, the text showing cancellations, the documentation of me handling every aspect of the kids' lives while Chloe was focused on her journey. Her lawyer didn't have much to counter with, beyond arguments about Chloe going through a transitional period and deserving grace. The judge looked at the evidence, looked at Chloe, and asked her directly how many of her scheduled visits she'd actually kept in the past 6 months. When she couldn't give a straight answer, I saw his expression change. He granted me primary physical custody, with Chloe getting visitation every other weekend. She walked out of that courtroom looking like she'd been slapped. She didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after the hearing. When she finally did, it wasn't to apologize or ask about the kids. It was to tell me, "You're punishing me for choosing myself, Adam. You're using the system to hurt me." I remember thinking that I didn't need to use anything to hurt her. She was doing that perfectly well on her own. Julian left a month after the custody hearing. Just moved out while she was at work. Left a note saying he couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't be responsible for a kid that wasn't his, and a girlfriend who was drowning in regret disguised as empowerment. Chloe called me sobbing. Actually sobbing, for the first time since this whole thing started. She asked if she could come over, said she needed to talk. I told her, "We can talk about the kids anytime. But if you need someone to process your relationship drama with, that's not my job anymore." The self-healing group had completely disappeared by this point. No more meetings. No more supportive comments. Just silence from the women who had cheered her on when she was blowing up her life, but had nothing to offer when she was living in the wreckage. Here's what I learned from watching this unfold: when people build their identity around rejecting responsibility, they attract others doing the same thing. And when reality hits, that whole support system collapses because it was never built on anything real to begin with. It was built on validating each other's avoidance. Chloe moved into a cheaper apartment, started working full-time again out of necessity, found childcare for her baby, and slowly started trying to rebuild some kind of relationship with Maya and Ethan. Showing up more consistently for her visits. Actually asking them about school and their lives. But the damage was done. Maya was polite but distant. Ethan was guarded. And they both knew, on some fundamental level, that I was the one who'd been there all along. I started seeing someone new around this time. A woman I met through work named Sarah. Nothing serious at first, just coffee and conversations with someone who didn't come with years of baggage. It felt strange to laugh again, to have an adult conversation that wasn't about custody schedules or missed visits. I didn't tell Chloe, and I definitely didn't introduce Sarah to the kids for months. I wanted to be sure. Wanted to protect them from any more instability. Then Chloe found out I was seeing someone. I don't know how. Maybe mutual friends, maybe she saw something on social media. And that's when she reached out, asking to meet. "Adam, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to hear me out." I looked at that text for a long time before responding. And I realized something important: she still didn't get it. Even after everything, she still thought this was about her. I met Chloe at a coffee shop 6 months after Julian left. Neutral territory. I didn't want her in my house, and she certainly didn't want me in hers. When she walked in, looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sympathy. Just this flat acknowledgement that we were strangers now. She ordered a tea she didn't drink and spent the first 5 minutes apologizing. Not for leaving. Not for abandoning our children. But for how things had turned out. Like our marriage ending was some kind of natural disaster instead of a series of choices she'd made, deliberately. She told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of self-reflection. She wanted me to understand she never meant to hurt anyone. She was just trying to be true to herself. And I sat there, thinking about all the times Maya asked if Mommy still loved her, while Chloe was being true to herself with a 26-year-old. She said Julian leaving had been a wake-up call, that she realized she'd been chasing an idea instead of dealing with reality. She wanted to do better, be better, for our kids. She wanted me to see she was trying. I told her I could see she was trying, and that was good, for the kids. That consistent visits and actual presence in their lives was what mattered. She looked at me like I'd missed the point of everything she'd just said. Then she got to the real reason she wanted to meet. Asking if there was any chance. Any possibility that we could try again. Not jump back into marriage, obviously, but maybe start over, take things slow, see if we could rebuild what we had. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to figure out if she was serious. When I realized she was, I asked her why she thought I would want that. Why she thought 13 years of marriage and 2 children wasn't enough of a try. Why she thought I'd be interested in being her backup plan now that her adventure had failed. She got defensive immediately, saying it wasn't like that. Saying she wasn't asking me to rescue her. She was asking if I still believed in our family. And I told her, I believe in our kids, Chloe. I believe in being their father. But you and me? That ended when you chose yourself. She started crying then. Not the manipulative kind, but the genuine kind that comes from finally understanding you can't undo what you've done. She said I was being heartless, that I was punishing her for being honest about her needs. I leaned back and said I wasn't punishing her for anything. I was just not volunteering to be hurt again. And there's a difference between punishment and boundaries. She brought up the kids, saying they deserved to have both parents together, that an intact family was better for them. I reminded her that she was the one who decided an intact family wasn't enough, that she was the one who chose to blow everything up because some women on the internet told her she was oppressed. Chloe switched tactics then, trying a different approach. Saying the courts were unfair to mothers, that the system was designed to punish women who didn't fit traditional roles, that I had used my privilege to take her children away. I let her finish. Then very calmly, I laid out the facts. How she'd missed over 60% of her scheduled visits in the first 6 months. How she'd cancelled on the kids' birthdays. How she'd been so focused on her rebirth that she forgot she already had 2 humans who needed her. And I asked her which part of that was the system being unfair versus her just not showing up. She didn't have an answer. She just sat there looking at me, like I was supposed to absolve her. Tell her it was okay, we all make mistakes, let's just move forward. But I was done absolving her. The custody arrangement stayed as it was. And over the next few months, Chloe did actually start showing up more consistently. Spending time with the kids. Asking about their lives. Being present in the small ways that matter. But she never stopped looking at me like I was the villain in her story. I introduced Sarah to the kids around this time, 8 months into our relationship. They liked her. She didn't try too hard, didn't try to be their mom. She just treated them like people and let relationships develop naturally. Sarah was a civil engineer, steady and calm, everything Chloe wasn't. And she understood that the kids came first, that building trust takes time, that you can't rush healing. Chloe found out, and sent me a long text about how I was replacing her, how I was showing our kids that people are disposable, how I was modeling unhealthy relationship patterns. I didn't respond. Engaging with that level of projection felt pointless. The kids adjusted slowly. They had their routines with me. Their scheduled time with Chloe. Their lives moved forward, the way kids' lives do, with remarkable resilience when given stability. Maya started playing soccer again, something she'd quit when Chloe left because she was too anxious to focus on anything. Watching her score her first goal, with me and Sarah cheering from the sidelines, felt like a small victory against everything that had tried to break her. Ethan started opening up more, talking about his feelings, processing what had happened with the help of the therapist I'd found. He told me one day that he understood now. Mom's choices weren't about him. Weren't about any of us. They were about her. I was proud of him for figuring that out at 13 years old, even though it broke my heart that he had to. Chloe continued her narrative on social media, posting about the challenges of co-parenting with a difficult ex, about how society punishes women for choosing authenticity, about bias in family courts. Her few remaining friends from the self-healing group would comment supportive things, having no idea what actually happened. She never posted about the visits she missed. Never mentioned why custody was awarded the way it was. Never acknowledged that she'd chosen a man she barely knew over her own children. It was always about what was done to her, never what she had done. I ran into one of her old friends from that group at the grocery store once. She gave me this look of pure judgment, like I was the man who crushed a woman's spirit. I wanted to tell her the whole story. But I didn't. People believe what they want to believe, and I was tired of defending myself. What would you have done in that moment? Rebecca and I got engaged 2 years after we started dating. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet proposal at home. When I told the kids, they were excited, in that cautious way kids are when they've learned that good things can disappear. Chloe heard about it through the kids and called me, angry. Asking how I could move on so fast, how I could bring another woman into our children's lives, how I could just replace her like she never mattered. And I told her, I'm not replacing you, Chloe. You did that yourself, when you decided being their mother wasn't enough. She said I was heartless. Said I never really loved her if I could move on this easily. And I said, I loved you for 13 years. I loved you through every version of yourself you showed me. But I'm not going to love you through the version that abandons our kids. That's where I draw the line. That was the last real conversation we had. Everything after that was logistics and schedules and information about the kids. Polite and distant, like strangers coordinating shared responsibilities. The kids are doing well now. They have therapy. They have routines. They have a father who shows up, and a stepmother who's kind, and a mother who visits on weekends and tries, in her own limited way. Chloe still posts sometimes about her journey, about lessons learned, about the cost of authenticity, but she never quite admits what she actually did. Never quite takes full responsibility. Just hints at having paid a heavy price for being true to herself. She still has her baby with Julian, raising him alone, working full-time, doing the single mom thing she'd somehow thought wouldn't be hard. And I wonder sometimes if she ever connected the dots. If she ever realized that what she ran away from was exactly what she ended up with, just with less support and more judgment. I don't think she's a bad person. I really don't. I think she's someone who got sold a lie about what freedom means. And by the time she figured out it was a lie, she'd already burned everything down. But understanding someone's mistakes doesn't mean volunteering to live with the consequences of them. And I'd done that for 13 years already. Here's what I want you to take away from this story, because I've had 2 years to think about it. Real love isn't about grand gestures. Or finding yourself or choosing yourself first. It's about showing up on the boring days. It's about doing the dishes and helping with homework and being there when your kid has a nightmare. It's about building something together instead of constantly looking for what you're missing. Chloe thought she was being brave by choosing herself. Thought she was breaking free from oppression. But all she really did was trade one set of responsibilities for another, while losing the people who actually mattered. The irony is that she ended up exactly where she started, a working mom dealing with the daily grind of raising a kid. Except now she's doing it alone, without the support system she destroyed. She said she chose herself. Said it like it was this revolutionary act. And maybe in her mind it was. But I chose our kids. I chose to be the parent who stayed, who showed up, who did the unglamorous work of actually raising them. And looking at Maya laughing at dinner, at Ethan doing his homework without anxiety, at the life we've built from the wreckage she left behind, I know which choice was worth defending. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do isn't walking away from your responsibilities. It's staying and honoring them. It's being the person your kids can count on when everything else falls apart. And that's the lesson I hope my kids take from all of this. Not that their mother was wrong or bad, but that real strength comes from commitment, not from running away when things get hard. What do you think about all this?